Lords, Amnesty International have raised particular concerns over the crackdown on civil society and journalists in Kashmir and Jammu. Can the Noble Lord the Minister detail what steps the government has taken to protect press freedom, and have they engaged with the International Federation of Journalists who have consistently fought for reporting rights in Jammu and Kashmir as well as globally?
Answer. May I ask if the British government has taken the note of 4 letters written in the recent times by the Indian government to the by the UN rapporteurs on torture, arbitrary detentions, extrajudicial and custodial killings in Indian administered Jammu and Kashmir? And furthermore, do we know the response from the Indian government, and if there was no response, then what course of action does our government suggest to the UN Security Council to take, being a P5 member of the Security Council and defender of human rights?
Baroness Town.
My Lords, will the Noble Lord the Minister explain to me why we immediately supported sanctions against Russia when it annexed the Crimea, even though 97% of the people of Crimea regarded themselves as Russian and had supported Russia in their annexation? And yet, no action at all has been taken since India's revocation of Jammu Kashmir special status. They've imposed total lockdown on the majority Muslim population, and thousands, as we've already heard, have been taken prisoner, many tortured. Please, can the Minister explain why we behaved differently?
The former Chief Minister of Indian-administered Kashmir, Mrs Mufti, was detained in August last year when the Indian government stripped the region of its partial autonomy. She was put under house arrest under a law that allows detention without charge for up to 2 years. She has only just been freed. Has the government raised with the government of India this and other arbitrary detentions?
My Lords, in Indian-administered Kashmir, Kashmiris enter their 16th month of lockdown, with curfews, a ban on communication access, closing of media outlets, and widespread arrest of politicians and human rights activists. So will the government press for a free and independent plebiscite for Kashmiris as mandated by the United Nations? And does he recognise the urgency of Kashmiris having their voice heard at a time that the current BJP Indian government is deliberately changing the population reality on the ground in contravention of UN resolutions?
Gresford.
Is the Minister aware that hundreds of applications for habeas corpus have been lodged in the High Court over a 15-month period arising out of the arbitrary detention without trial of thousands of people under the Public Safety Act, including, as we have heard, political and community leaders? The court rules specify a 14-day time limit from lodging an application to the hearing. They have not even been listed, let alone dealt with. This is especially urgent since the shocking wave of arrests on the 28th of October. Will Her Majesty's government join with the Jammu and Kashmir Bar Association in their strenuous protests to the Indian authorities against these breaches of the United Nations Human Rights Convention?
Britain's partitioning of India on the fallacy of irreconcilable religious differences promoted active hostility between Pakistan and India, particularly in Jammu and Kashmir. Independent reports confirm a significant increase in human rights abuse since the Indian Army takeover of the disputed region. Would the Noble Lord the Minister agree that Britain has a moral responsibility to work for a greater measure of secular autonomy for the Hindu, Muslim and Sikh populations of one of the most beautiful places in the world?
I agree with the Noble Lord that Kashmir is one of the most beautiful places in the world, and we continue to raise issues of concern with the Indian authorities, indeed Pakistani authorities, on ensuring rights and freedom for all.
Baroness Thornhill.
Thank you, Minister. In response to your words it's quite clear that both sides are not sitting down and resolving their issues, and nor is our government's raising things with the Indian government working. Demonstrably, there's been an escalation in atrocities since the lockdown and the split last year. And it is clear that UN resolutions are being ignored with impunity. Minister, what does the government believe actually has to happen before the international community responds? Or is the UN to be ignored and regarded as a crocodile with rubber teeth?
My Lords, the government is seeing progress. As I've already indicated, we are seeing some positive movements about the easing of the lockdown. I've already alluded to that, and indeed the release of detainees in India-administered Kashmir, and we continue to do so. We have a strong, progressive and constructive dialogue with the Indian government, and that will continue, and that allows us to have very candid and frank exchanges of issues of concerns, and we raise these regularly and will continue to do so.
My Lords, the time allowed for this question has elapsed.